haven't heard that.
Oh, yeah. So first, my new toy brought to you by, oh, wait, it goes the other way. Brought to you by Trent.
Wait, well,
Oh,
We have
you got
sound
soundboard.
effects, baby.
All right.
This podcast is getting real.
I'm
You want
so
some-
sorry. I'm so sorry
Some intro
for
music.
what you're about to experience.
This is our Oh boy.
Hold on to your butts for this one, folks. We assembled the Tech Committee Chair Triumvirate this week for episode 28 to talk about how these trade associations are joining forces to help their members and the industry move forward into this digital transformation. Listen in as Bill Weber, Joseph Lansdell, and Stacy Zerr drop all sorts of knowledge bombs on us.
Oh boy.
All right. So, yeah,
it's
if
terrible.
you haven't figured it out, we have no sponsors. And we're live. Episode 28, The Power Triangle. That's right. The dorks are back, but we found those that are more powerful than ourselves, which is the best way to go, right? It's better to not be the smartest person in the room. You should find a better room. So as great dorks do, we found three way smarter people than ourselves. We're going to be joined by Joseph Lansdell, Stacy Zerr, and Bill Weber. We'll let them introduce themselves when it's their time. But first, we're brought to you this week by Flaviar. Flaviar. Actually, I'm going to say, and for those of you who didn't sign up, so I know there's only 3 people that are going to get a preview of what you might be drinking later. I'm drinking Woody Creek Distillers, which is right here out of wonderful Basalt, Colorado. And it has a great history that y'all can go look up. But I am drinking their Colorado bourbon, which is a Colorado straight bourbon aged in New American oak and blended with Rocky Mountain spring water. So I'm staying all local tonight. That's where I'm coming from. Trent, what do you got coming for me? I love that background. It's an introduction to this triangle that we have.
Yeah. So this is one I've had on before. Like I was in a hurry coming home, so I went back to the local brewery. Come on now, get in there.
You got to chest it.
There
Chest
it is. Oh. But you can see the hippopotamus on there because it is the hippopotamus.
The hippopotamus.
Yeah. So a local.
Let's just take a beer and make it nasty by making it all bitter with a bunch of hops, right?
I mean, yeah. Why not? I don't understand.
What's the problem with that?
I don't get what you're talking about.
Well, I guess Travis doesn't like my drinks.
Well, I guess Travis, with such an opinion, you should go next.
All right. Well, I will go next. And I know this is at least popular with Jonathan. I think Trent, you like it too. We got a little bit of a Whistle Pig 10-year. Jeff, you like that too. And I went ahead and mixed it into a nice old fashioned. I went all out and I got the cocktail cherries. So we're drinking in style tonight. And after a day, a few of us talked about it pre-show. It's been a day. It's a day that's needed it. Right, Jonathan? What do you got?
I went down to around Nashville last week. So I came back with like a box of bourbons that you can't get in Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania is a bad spot to live. When it comes to bourbon, like there's some good things. I can't think of any offhand, but there's something. But I went in there and this dude was really nice. And he's like, hey, I want this Sazerac. I want this Dickel. And he says, don't you like Buffalo Trace? And I'm like, no. And he goes, you need to try it with some ice. And I said, I don't drink any bourbon with ice. And he says, try it with ice. And he was totally right. So I'm having just the normal Buffalo Trace, which I usually don't like, but if you add like some ice or some water to it, it's one of those bourbons that like is really nice, just a teeny bit watered down.
What do they say?
So
that
I'm going to enjoy the Trace.
Nice.
Oh, it does. But I really don't like it without that. It's the only one I like with too. So it's an exceptional bourbon in that it's the exception.
I like it. And
Joseph, how about you?
Well, before you go, Jonathan, I'll say the one good thing about Pennsylvania is you're in it. So at least we got that going for us. And actually, I just spent a week and a half there, or 2.5 weeks there on vacation. So there's lots of great things about Pennsylvania, but you're the best, buddy. Yeah, I got to suck up to somebody, right? All right. And you're right. Let's send it over to Joseph because I heard some sort of rocks in the background earlier when
Yep,
we were talking
you did.
pre-show, Joseph.
You did. I started early. So Woodford Reserve is my drink of choice, and I'm actually got it's hard to do this bottle. I bought a special
Oh, cool.
Kentucky Derby.
Nice.
147th running. So my
Yeah.
brother bought me back a bottle of that, and I thought I'd crack it open for tonight.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome. If you look back at our shows, I've had that same bottle on before because I'm with you. My regular go-to is a Woodford. That's a great. I already like this guest. I told you I knew this was going to be a great one. Well, Stacy, I've seen a glass that I recognize come into view a few times. Stacy Zerr, introduce yourself and your drink.
So I actually pulled out this is the MCAA Tech glasses.
Yeah.
I pulled those out for the event, but my whiskey, it's a whiskey and cream liquor, Revelton Cream. It is from a little brewery or distillery here in Osceola, Iowa, which is about 50 miles down the road. And for a lot of you who have met me at conferences and stuff, a White Russian is my go-to drink. And this stuff reminds me very much of White Russian. So Travis might have had it.
That. Yeah.
I was going to say, Travis got a chance to try it this week. So
it's very good. Surprisingly good, because I'm not usually like that creamy liqueurs type stuff, but that was very good.
Yeah. This reminds me of the Big Lebowski every time I hear White Russian.
That's where you have to go. Like Stacy, you should have a Big Lebowski background, right? Like that's what we need. All right. Well, Bill Weber, thanks for joining us. What do you got for us today?
I have a scaled IPA. This is from Trillium Brewing. It's a local brewery here, very popular locally, kind of hard to get. As usual, I was running out of the office last minute, and this is what they were serving in the office, so I grabbed one for the road.
Nice.
All right.
I won't shit on your choice of an IPA, just Trent.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Travis only does that with people with our own people.
You know what? Bill's my new favorite.
Man, I'm going to lose my spot to Bill here if I'm not careful. At least you might, Travis. Who knows?
I know.
All right. So we've gotten through the introductions, but you all represent 3 extraordinary trades. And I'd like to kick it off and maybe go in the order of whom I know, because Stacy, we've interviewed you. I've interviewed you quite a few times and have really enjoyed learning from you. So tell everybody listening in, if they don't know who you are, kind of who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your technology approach.
So Stacy Zerr, I work for the Waldinger Corporation. We are based in corporate headquarters are Des Moines, Iowa, but we have regional offices in Omaha, Wichita, St. Joe, Cedar Rapids, all the fun places that nobody ever wants to come visit. And we are actually, depending on location, we're actually a complete MEP firm. So we have mechanical, piping, plumbing, sheet metal, and electrical all in-house. So we're kind of a little unique in that we are actually signatory to SMACNet, MCA, and NECA. So we kind of got the trifecta here.
Very cool.
You're the triangle in one. Now, you've had an interesting journey when it came to technology. Has that impacted or been impacted by you guys being a multi-trade group?
Well, I don't know for sure. I came to the industry. I tell people I got in construction when I was young and never was smart enough to get out because my family had a business. And I went into mechanical engineering, ended up at Waldinger, left to go sell for QuickPen, which was an estimating software back in the day, because every engineer wants to be a salesperson deep down inside, right? And worked there for a few years, circled back to contracting, circled back to QuickPen. We got acquired by Trimble. So that was my whole introduction to total stations and everything else. And then I always used to joke that to complete my circle of companies, I had to go back to work for Waldinger, and landed back here about 10 years ago. So I would say my time at Trimble and QuickPen probably most influenced my attitude and my viewpoint on technology. I'm always looking to steal something from other industries.
That's awesome. That's such a great way to go about it. Joseph, I'm gonna kick it over to you. Give an introduction to people who don't know you, a little bit about the company, and why you're in the power triangle today.
I don't have a clue why I am, but my name's
It's because
Joseph.
you drink Woodford.
Yeah, that's right. My name is Joseph Lansdell. I'm the president of Pointer Sheet Metal. We're in Greenwood, Indiana, just south of Trent there, just south of Indianapolis. We are a straight line sheet metal contractor through and through. That means that we do no multi-trade work in ourselves, but we do commercial is our main line of work, industrial, and we're pretty much throughout the nation. I've got probably more people in Texas today than I do in Indiana doing automotive work. There's a smart gentleman out in California that decided to relocate his factory to Austin, Texas, and we're doing an automotive plant there. We also do specialty metals, which means ornamental metals, architectural metals, artwork, things like that. And then the last year, really, I need to say 2 years, COVID kind of blew the first year of it out of the water, but we've got a modular shop. So we do full volumetric modular fabrication. And we open our shops up to other trades for multi-trade. And so we're doing a lot of that stuff, and technology definitely drives that.
It's very cool. That's very cool.
Awesome. Well, Bill, I know not to be going last, but of course you're gonna knock them all out of the park. So Bill Weber, tell everybody, a little bit about yourself, where you come from, your company.
I'm used to going last. My last name begins with a W.
I feel your pain with the V.
I'm one of the principal owners of Gaston Electrical. We are located in Norwood, Massachusetts. Most of our work is in the greater Boston area. I got into the business. I'm a third generation owner. Like a lot of people, I was not smart enough to stick somewhere else, so I migrated over to the family's business. Our approach to tech is really more about function and processes. So anything that eliminates redundancy, makes our lives easier, saves time, impresses our clients. We'll try it out. To me, tech is a tool. I'm very low tech myself, but we'll try anything that we think will get us some bang for the buck.
Travis?
That's great. So Jeff kind of alluded to it here, why are you part of the Power Triangle? And I think that, we've hinted at your different associations. So you've introduced yourselves around, and I don't care what order you go. Maybe Bill, you can go first and we'll just go backwards, but kind of talk to us about, why your individual associations decided to get together and start doing technology. I know the origin story for MCAA. Brian Helm is my boss, and I believe he was the guy that kicked it off there. But I would like to learn more about each of your associations, starting into technology, how your different groups formed, how you ended up in charge, and kind of go from there.
Well, I can tell you, I'm not quite sure how I ended up in charge. In charge is probably not the right word. But our association focuses on technology because they need to support their members, and across the country we have very, very large electrical contractors to 2-3-man service shops. There's something to be gained from for all of them. You got to focus across the board as to what can help that service contractor and that contractor who's building stadiums or power plants or whatever it is with 1,000 workers on it. I think that from the electrical standpoint that we're a little bit behind the curve in terms of relative to the sheet metal contractors who I think operate more as true manufacturers. I know in the Northeast, prefab really caught on a little bit late up here relative to some other parts of the country, and I'm not quite sure why that is. Personally, we've had a shop for about 10 years in my company, and it's been growing every year. And we've really only focused on trying to become more of a manufacturer, focusing on true manufacturing lean principles, and we're trying to spread more of that because it really helps my business. The more I can share with my competitors, which I don't mind doing, with my peer group members from around the country, to help make them better. I think that benefits all of us, and we're all union contractors, right? So, we need to make sure that we're constantly selling value, right? Because we have a higher price point. So it's really important that we're at the forefront of our industry, and we got to be selling ourselves, saying, hey, look, you're going to get more value because you're paying, 30% more, whatever the number is, it varies city to city. But that's why it's so important, I think, for NECA to push technology to help with development, to find products that are developed for our contractors. And I know we're going to talk about this probably a little bit later, but starting to talk about how do we collaborate more with the other MEP trades, and maybe all the trades, so that we can all benefit jointly with prefabrication and better ways to coordinate. And we've seen the industry evolve over time in terms of coordination, and frankly, I think in a lot of ways it's kind of become a free for all. And you have general contractors who are managing the process, but really the experts lie within my company and Stacy's company and Joe's company, and we should be driving the bus when it comes to doing that, because I think we can do it better than a general contractor or somebody who's not really familiar with how we do what we do.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Joseph, you have similar beginnings there?
Yeah, so I really try to think about how I got picked to lead the SMACNA charge on tech, and I think it came from Angie Simon, who's the current president. She's the first female president of SMACNA, and first two-time president of SMACNA with COVID. They let her in the seat 2 years in a row, and Angie's one of my peer partners. So Stacy's company, Guy Gass, was SMACNA president and passed it on to me. I passed that on to Jack Knox, who's also a peer partner. And now there's Angie. And I think Angie just said, hey, look, I think Joseph does some really cool stuff at his own business. I think there's, he probably could lead the charge on this. While I kind of agree with Bill, I'm probably the least techie person of our tech committee. I kind of look at tech this way. I have a lot of ideas in my head. In the old days, I'd go to Excel or I'd go to a PDF writer and I'd create something. And I would just say, hey, here's our tech. It's a writable PDF form. Have at it. Isn't that cool? Tech somewhat passed me by, but I have some really smart people that work for me. And I just mind map some things out there. And I say, this is what I want the end result to be. And in about 2 to 3 weeks, they come back and say, hey, here's an app we've written for that. Or I have them sit with another vendor and I go, hey, I want you to sit in on this meeting. I don't know what the heck we're going to look at, but I know there's something we could probably copy or maybe buy. And so then they come back and say, hey, look, I like their software, but it really doesn't fit what we do. And from the old guy in the room kind of aspect on tech, probably the thing I do the most with it is think about the workarounds and how somebody's going to cheat the system. And that's probably where my younger staff doesn't quite understand, because they haven't been around people long enough to see everybody finds the path of least resistance, even though the tech that you put in front of them, it might be the path of least resistance. They don't believe it. And they find a neat way to, I was going to say the F word, but
go ahead, let it fly.
They find a real neat way to work around what you've developed or put in front of them. So I kind of say, you know what, I really like what you've come up with here on this app or this low code thing that we've written, but somebody's going to do this. And they're like, oh, I never even thought of that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of that initial techie guy at work. I can't build the tech, but then I'm the one that kind of beats it up. So that's really where I stand on tech.
I love that. I have a development background in Jeff, and no offense here, but we always say when you're programming, especially user experience stuff, like never underestimate the ingenuity of idiots. They will find a way to work around or break a system, so yeah, but that's a great point. You really have to figure out, because people, if they don't like the way it works, it doesn't do what they want to do, they're going to find a way around it. So,
and it's really, all this stuff's about ROI, right? Mm-hmm. It's all about, we're not doing this because it's cool. We do some stuff because it's cool, and we put some gadgets in there because it's cool or it looks cool. But honestly, we're doing this because it's a return on investment. It's scalable. It helps the people. And I try to explain that to everybody. I'm not doing this to make your job harder. We're doing this to make it easier and to increase our capacity to do work. And so that's really kind of how we sell it.
That's great. Stacy, you want to tell your MCA story then and how we got here?
Yeah. So I'm going to say eons ago. It was, I don't even know how many years ago. I was actually on the BIM committee for MCAA. And there was a separate technology committee, which is what Brian was in charge of. And we were talking at one point about how really BIM and technology were colliding, and you couldn't, you really had to use your model to enable all of your technology processes. And so I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, maybe it's been longer. They actually combined the BIM and the MCA tech committees. And so there was a handful of us that landed on the tech committee that had originally been on the BIM committee, myself, Rod Foley, or I think we're maybe somebody from Apollo. So that's how I ended up on the MCAA tech committee. I was on it for a few years, and then Sean asked me last year to step up and be the committee lead for this year. And I also happen to be on the SMACNA technology committee. So I actually sit on both committees right now. And I've been really excited about the trade associations working together for once. That's been one of my big things, is that we all see the future, right? The future is all going to modular fabrication with all the different trades. And I honestly feel like as a union contractor that sometimes we're behind the 8 ball because we, even in our own shop, we fight over who's going to build the rack or who's going to pay for the rack that we're building. And it just, I'm afraid that we're going to get left behind if we have those kind of arguments.
Absolutely.
No, that's a great point. We don't want to get left behind for sure.
Right. I kind of liked something that Joe touched on that kind of had me thinking was he talked about he's not really sure why he's in the room, right? But you have an approach to the tech. Like, I think, I want to say like tech is an idea, right? And that's kind of the approach that you're taking to your influence in that realm. And it's a similar approach that I take, which I think is why it hit home to me is, there's plenty of people out there that can seek out and recognize the tech, but is it actually functional for the task that it's augmenting? I mean, so it's really cool. I mean, that's a certain approach that you have to have. So, Joe, when you ask, like, I don't know why I'm in the room in the tech committee, it's like, well, that's why, because you need somebody to check and balance the sheer dorks like us, like us sometimes to kind of, because we can get out in left field sometimes. And I mean, you need that idea, man, to kind of reel it back in every now and then.
It's easy to get out of bounds on it. We, somebody a little bit more wise than me once told me that, you got to remember what makes you money in the end, not your core business. And tech really isn't our core business in the sheet metal industry, but it drives everything. And I think Stacy mentioned it before we got on air here, that really sheet metal was out ahead of the curve. I mean, with some of the digital technology driving machines and things like that, I don't know where we lost some of it. I feel, and it's funny that Bill thought the electrical was behind. I feel like sheet metal's behind. I don't know where Stacy thinks mechanical is, but I think it's always kind of a driver to think that you're behind the other people. That drives innovation to a certain extent.
You know why you got behind? You got comfortable making money.
Yeah. But ultimately what we're trying to do is make more money or be able to do more things with the tech. And as long as you remember your core business, that really does help.
Yeah.
I have to make you feel better. I've done some consulting work in the past. Everybody sucks. Everybody thinks that they're the worst thing on the planet, and everybody sucks. I know multi-billion-dollar insurance companies that run things off as shared spreadsheets. So everybody sucks.
Yeah.
I think Travis and I have gone to several different meetings and stuff together, and I always walk out of that meetings and go, I don't know about you guys, but I feel so much better. I don't feel like I'm alone in this world. It's as much as a support group as information.
I was just about
sharing.
to say that we're almost a support group for each other sometimes. Yeah.
No, I think that sometimes, tech becomes more of a story than it is a reality, and that end users, owners, or our customers, they want to start delivering it before it's ready. So, that's where you see sort of some of the hiccups in the road, and you start feeling like you're behind because there's a story being sold, to some, developer building a high rise, Yeah, if he ever saw, how the sausage was really made, he'd be horrified.
Isn't that the not to give a plug to anybody, but isn't that the Dato story? Like Jake and them going around doing interviews, and they were on this like totally digital job site, and the guy like tapped Jake and was like, psst, psst, come back tomorrow. And he came back the next day, and they were like, let me show you how we really do everything. And they opened up all the cabinets, and that's where all the paper was, and all of it came out. And it was like, yeah, part of what we're doing is selling. So you're absolutely right. Like the tech sometimes gets a little bit oversold, but you guys are also trying to sell yourselves, right? Like part of, Bill, you touched on this earlier, of being union contractors is, you might be not the low bid, but you have the power of the union and the associations that are powering it to learn and get access to that technology. I mean, isn't that the background behind Trent right now with the MCAA, the innovation, that innovation conference this year was about bringing all of you together to turn it from story to reality, right? So I'd be interested in one of you, if you have a story of, kind of, it was vaporware before it was return on investment ware, but that really has surprised you and reached the point of, really driving back. Maybe Stacy, something around total stations.
I feel like total stations are old news, Jeff.
Okay, you obviously don't sell in this industry.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Revit's 20-year-old software too, and we're calling that revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
It's only like 17, I think. So yeah.
And
I remember
Procore is a startup.
Yeah, I remember when total stations. I remember being at an MCA conference, and somebody was in a meeting, and they were like, if you don't own a total station, you're an idiot. Like, one of the presenters, and like Trimble made tons of money in that conference, but. And I also find it funny how people call total stations Trimbles, and there's lots of other brands, it's like Kleenex, but, we're constantly trying new things and innovating. And our big push has been with Stratus. And I know that Trent and Travis are both in that same boat, trying to implement it and deploy it. And there's part of it that's vaporware. I mean, there's part of it that's not quite there yet, but there are parts of it that have revolutionized the way we do things. So it's that's one of those that we tout it and we talk about it. We talk about how it's transforming our processes into lean construction and paperless shops and everything else. And it has done a ton of that, but it's still not quite there.
Right.
It never will be though, right? That's
I mean, people keep saying well, when are we going to be done implementing that software? And I'm like,
Never.
There's so many facets to that software. We may never be done with it. It's like, what can we do with it today? Because it just depends on how you apply it. We're just looking at applying it to some of our sheet metal spiral processes. And I feel like we're doing something really cool and innovative there. I think it's that thought process that you always got to be looking for, what can we do better? Constantly challenging the status quo. I mean, that's the only way that companies like ours stay in business. Mm-hmm. And there's always going to be a low cost provider. How do we be a best value provider?
Sure.
Piggybacking on the idea of vaporware, one of the things that I found out when I went to the first tech convention, and one of the things I definitely found out when you all came together, is that what's vaporware for one person can be working for somebody else really well.
Good point.
And that's what, when I came to the first tech convention, it was an MCA one. I was sitting at a table and there was all these people talking about all these things that didn't work. And I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania. I didn't know they didn't work. We've been using them for 6 months, you know, and when I was at the multi-trade, which was so much better, there was two people talking and the one guy's like, nope, that will never happen. The guy beside him is in electrical. He's like, no, we have something for that. It's almost that. It's got to be able to work for piping. And they had figured out a purchasing module in electrical that you could port over to piping. And I think it's that interchange. We've been talking as a one sector thing in MCA to one another about solutions we already know. And I think the magic that happened at the last convention was some of the things we thought didn't work, somebody else got them working. It just might have been in electrical or it might have been in sheet metal. I literally heard somebody say at the last one, Stacy, and you'll love this, you can't do ductwork in Revit. They're like, you
Oh.
absolutely can't fabricate out of
Sure.
Reddit. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you sure? Because
Wow.
there's a lot of people here.
I know a lot of people that would disagree with that one, but
Yeah.
it's,
But I
Well-
think that's the thing, isn't it? Go
Yeah.
ahead.
When we were at QuickPen, we used to joke, right? Do you know what they call perfect software? Dun, dun, obsolete.
Yeah.
By the
Yeah.
time it gets to the point where it's perfect, you're onto a different operating system or something, a different completely business process, So you're constantly innovating. Yeah. I mean, like when we get together, I'm always like, wait, how are you doing that? And Guy Gass, the former president of our Iowa division, I said one time to him about something about going to one of these peer group meetings and I was going to borrow and share ideas with other people. And he's like, screw borrowing, just pirate it. He goes, just take a son of a bitch and run with it. That's how you get stuff done.
That's Guy.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But do you guys so as you've started to expand out, and see what other people's doing, do you have some examples where you thought something was impossible and then you see somebody using it every day? Like I loved what Jake said when they called him back to the job site and they said, hey, we'll show you how we really do it. But there are job sites where how they really do it is the tech. Like they really do use the tech. It's just, and they assume that the sort of media buzz is in fact the way it's done. And they just worked and tinkered until they got something that was, a return on investment. Have you guys seen that sort of where you think it's impossible and then the guy next to you is doing it?
I don't know that we've had that like aha moment where we see it. I mean, I'm personally like a late adapter of software. Beta testing can be frustrating, and when you roll something out and it doesn't work exactly the way it's supposed to work, you thought it was going to work. Your people get frustrated, and it's hard to get that buy-in to really use something to its fullest potential. I mean, we see some kind of neat things in our industry, like for electrical, like there's like Greenlee, the BendWorks software, which is terrific. I mean, the Bender costs I mean, 4 years ago, it was $500,000. I mean, it's like cost prohibitive. But there are some automation options in our business. They haven't really become truly an option for my company. But I think the trick for me is really, once you find something that kind of works, is to find, your super user, your champion, whatever it is, to make sure you're not just using, 10, 20% of the functionality of the software, that you're really going deep, right? Because that's where you get the true value of what this can do for you. But
hence,
so
Yeah.
we're kind of careful on what we pick and use, because it's hard to get to that point.
That's a great point. We always use beta testing internal. We find a champion. We don't just find the best user either. Sometimes we get two people. We get one on the higher level scale of user technology use and one on the low. And we get buy-in from both ends and meet in the middle. And even sometimes the low tech person will provide more valuable information than the techie person, because it seems more natural to them to use. And you get some really good feedback from the person that struggles with tech. One of the things that we've done is where I thought, wow, this is why is this company implementing this software? And usually you have to go, you kind of have to look at the root cause of why somebody would develop something. So we had a vendor come to us and show how we could see every little piece of rental equipment on a job site, like a little, you got the little pins everywhere. I'm like, I don't care where a Slim 19 lift is on a job site. I don't care about that. Why did they do that? They wanted to know where their assets were. It wasn't for us. It was just strictly, they had asset mapping for everything they owned. We flipped it and wrote some low code stuff and said, okay, we don't care where the asset is, but we want to pick up some pennies in between, and for rental, as all contractors know, it's that call off date. If you call it off a day or two late, you're paying for another 2 weeks, another week, another month, whatever the rental agreement is. And so we've been able to pick up some pennies here and there on being able to call off rent. And so all our people carry an app that they know, hey, look, this rental is up on this day, and they get notified a day ahead, and they make the decision that day ahead. Are we going to call it off, or are we going to have it for another period? And those are the little things that make a ton of money for us.
You probably stopped all development of that app for that vendor.
I didn't say vendor name.
No vendor names. No names.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, why not?
It's really cool. And we were talking about this before. Joseph, you kind of act as like a little bit of the check and balance along the way. And I don't want to call it the not so great user, but we saw this with the mule. If you guys have ever seen Construction Robotics, they put out the mule. It's a lift for masonry, for moving things.
Yep.
And what they found was it wasn't about taking the fastest mason could actually keep up with it, right? Like the fastest mason was still just as productive, didn't really need it. But the slowest mason caught up with the fastest mason. So sometimes technology isn't about light years ahead. It's about evening the playing field for everybody involved. Yeah. And I'm just wondering if, where you guys have seen anything that might have been able to bring that productivity up. So you saved pennies. I love that, because in the industry, we're usually bleeding those pennies off. We're forgetting them. So it's amazing where you can pick a few dollars up. We're like this, we love to say low margin. Yeah. And it's like, well, I think we kind of bleed some of our margin off.
Yeah.
You don't pick them up, Jeff. You just drop less, right?
Yeah. Drop less pennies. Yeah. Well,
better stated. That's correct.
Well, it was James Benham last week last week that said, there's gold buried on job sites. Like we're just burying it there.
And Joseph, one of the things I'd add is you're asking, like, you're saying, I'm not sure why I'm here, but when you described what you do for your company, that's like what every subject matter expert does that's working with these software companies, is basically tells them not something about the software, but how it's actually going to end up being used by the person, and whether or not they're just going to cheat this. Because really that's understanding that someone's going to cheat it is understanding who's going to use that software and how they're going to do it. And those people are golden to those companies. Like, you meet a company that has good subject matter experts, good people that have been in the industry a while and understands the value of the software in real life versus what they're marketing to. That's like gold. But I had it's sort of a sideways question for all of you, because all of you sort of represent the decision makers within your software, within your company, for technology. Have you noticed that the actual culture around technology within construction is sort of off? Because the culture in like other industries has been able to adapt really fast to technology. And I've thought for a long time that actually the problem is a little bit with the culture of construction, where we don't get a second chance. We get to build something, and then if we have to rebuild it, we have to walk away. So we can't do the minimum viable product and get away with it. We can't do as close as we can get and get away with it. Where these software companies are sort of born and bred on, let's get out the minimum viable product, and then we'll let our users tell us how to make it into a final product. Do you feel that clashes with our sort of culture? And, or maybe what are some of the other culture problems that you guys are seeing as you try to get that technology moved into use?
I think it depends on how desperate you are for the end result. Sometimes you're willing to try anything because you have a problem that you just can't solve, right? And you're halfway there. And if you have a development company or whoever's selling the software, if they're willing to work with you and to listen to your feedback, you can actually kind of shape that product to how you want it, not how some other company wants it. Like that can be a tremendous advantage. I don't know how common that is. We had that just with our ERP. We had a couple of modules that were relatively young, and it was kind of a mess, but we could see clearly where we were going to get to. And this was just, something simple as a third-party app for remote time entry into our Spectrum software. And it was newly developed, and we were like, no, we needed to work like this, and on these types of devices, and it's got to be easy. And they listened, and you get the next version will come out, and they gradually implement all of our suggestions. In 2 years' time, it was exactly what we would have developed for ourselves. And that was a huge win. And that was, that probably picked up, 4 hours of time for 45 foremen. And it didn't feel like a win, but we knew it was huge, right? And that's just like, it's one of the simplest things ever. But so, I mean, that was kind of a good story, but it can be scary. You know, if you get some software and you roll it out to your end users, especially if somebody's not really tech savvy and they get frustrated, they'll just put it down and they'll refuse to use it.
Talk
Jonathan,
about that all the time.
You said something that really hit home. We build something, we build it once. Well, in my 30-some years of doing this now, I had the opportunity when I was a project manager to do 2 identical jobs. And the nature of construction is there's so much waste riddled inside projects. And every job, I always say every job has its own personality. It could be one individual on that job site. It could be a different subcontractor. It could be, there's so many variables. And I always love ops guys that say, well, didn't you know that at estimating time? Well, you can't cover everything in an estimate. You just can't. Well, we had 2 identical projects, not 2 miles from each other. And they couldn't have been totally different in how they were executed. And the results were different. And so you're right. We don't get another bite at the apple. And the other thing that's really driving, not driving technology, but is causing a problem is there's a disparity of the haves and have-nots in construction. You know, we've got probably an average size contractor in SMACNA. I would know this at one time. I want to say it's less than 10 people. And then you have companies that are 1,000 people large, and they are investing. You know, James Benham will tell you what percentage of your net revenues should you invest back into tech. Those smaller companies aren't doing it. And then they're adopting things that are 20 and 30 years old, and they're slow to adopt, very slow. I mean, Bill, there's no way they're as slow as you are. But they're adopting things that we're putting back on the shelf. And so there's this big disparity in construction. And I really think it's getting wider. As I see technology, I think that disparity is getting even wider as we go.
Well, I think that's probably because the people who are driving development are those larger contractors. I mean, I think that exists even just with prefabrication. I mean, if you have in our industry, a 15-man electrical shop, you probably don't have the floor space to truly have a prefabrication shop, right? So all of the thought and the processes and lessons learned really go to the bigger contractors, and that's where that gap just keeps growing wider.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because that's actually, I mean, if you listen to Hugh Seaton, who we've had on, and if you watch his Construction Tech quarterly report, it's something he's really trying to get across is there's actually far more money to be made from the software side by going after the 19,000 non-ENR top 400 contractors. Yeah. 400's a pretty, but you're right, Bill, that's who's really providing the feedback and taking advantage. It's something that, and I'm with you, Joseph. I think that have and have nots gap is growing, and personally, I want to see that stop. I want to see. In fact, we're doing a series with Hugh around punching above your weight and utilizing technology as a small contractor to get involved against larger contractors, whether you're a trade contractor or a general contractor, and scale up because the technology's there now. But the risk is higher, Bill, for smaller companies. Like a 15-person company not only doesn't have the floor space, that money is not as much, Joseph, like you said, when James talks about the 1%, 2% you need to be saving and reinvesting in R&D. Well, that's a hell of a lot bigger if you're a $1 billion contractor than if you're a $10 million contractor. Right. So
Jeff, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
go.
Earlier, why do our associations invest all this money in technology? And that's the reason, right? Because they're really doing the work that those smaller contractors can't do. Yeah. And it's leveling the playing field because honestly, as a larger contractor, we're not better off having that big gap. We need a consistent product across the board from the union contracting market. So, I mean, really that's what our associations are doing. And maybe the larger contractors are, sitting on all the boards and driving the bus a little bit, but it's got to be something that's usable for everybody.
And that's probably, really why these tech committees exist. It is for that little contractor, the medium-sized small contractor, I think the disparity too, as we get the baby boomer generation selling their businesses out or closing doors, that's what concerns me mostly, is we've got this small contractor that perhaps their son or daughter don't want to take the business over. And so now they're stuck with what to do. And so at the late stage of their career, are they going to really reinvest in this company and make it, tech it up, if you will? And that's why I think some of that gaps even happening even further is they're not motivated to reinvest at this stage of their careers.
I agree with.
What's the I mean, with the complexity of the jobs, the problem is they're digging their own grave.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the
We're
problem.
just gonna have to drag them kicking and screaming, right? I mean,
They're
that's
shutting their way out of projects. I mean, it just
I think you need to make it a little bit easier, right? They can't afford to make all those mistakes along the way, right? You need to kind of do the learning for them and give them something that they can use, so that it's easier and less expensive. They don't have to, so they can adopt, but it's not going to be, a huge hit to the bottom line.
I think you're 100% correct. I really do.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think Stacy hit on something though when it comes to getting adoption, even in some of the big ones that where the owners are about to retire, and that's functionally obsolete. You can be a contractor who's functionally obsolete and do well for a space of 8 to 10 years,
Sure.
And not notice. And as you're doing that, you're becoming more and more obsolete. I would say the one bright spot that I'm seeing, and James, when he was on the show here, mentioned it, is the new contractors that are starting from nothing are starting with tech in mind.
Mhm.
Nice.
They're
Yeah.
starting amazingly high tech, startups. They're not I have a guy who left my former contractor to start a residential business. And his first call was, hey, what do I need to do to tech up? And he's running a really small business, but he started out with the tech. He looks like a bigger business. And those 5 and 10 and 15 people shops can look like a 20, 30, 40 person shop if they're really leveraging the technologies. So, I mean, I totally agree that the small guy, and I agree completely with what you said, that the small guy is sort of getting kicked out of this, but the new startups are actually kicking butt and taking names from the ones that I've seen. And I haven't seen a huge number of them, but the ones that I've seen have been like crazy. They'll start off, what's your big purchase? And they're like, well, we started off with a scanner. And it's like, you started off with $40,000 scanner, really? Like, well, we needed to do reality capture because we're just doing residential work. And it's like, you needed, the stories are actually pretty cool from those little startups. So I hope eventually the committees include more of those guys that just started out with this tech mindset.
Jonathan,
I think
That's really interesting.
startups have so much hope. They have the pipe.
They still have hopes and dreams. Is that what you're saying, Bill?
Reality hasn't slapped them right in the face.
Yeah, they haven't got slapped yet.
Contracting is not an easy game to enter.
I do think that's one thing we talk a lot about on the MCA Tech Committee is a lot of us are bigger contractors, but we talk frequently about the fact that the people who really need the most assistance are those smaller contractors that are getting started up. I'm in a big company, and there are times I'm jealous of the smaller contractors because they're more agile and nimble. I mean, like when I got to go sell a new software product internally, I've got 15 operating unit managers that I have to convince that this is a good idea. And then multiple different branches and stuff that I have to go out and implement things with, and I think there are times it's definitely easier if you're a smaller contractor.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's the same thing for people that get interested in, development and stuff. That's why you see a lot of people that work at the SAPs of the world that hop off even the Facebooks now, they hop off and they go work for a startup company because it's just more fun. It's nimble. Decisions are made quickly. Jeff, I think you look like you're going to jump in.
No. Well, I was actually going to pivot us a little bit because I think there's something else here about these contracting groups. And I wonder if it goes on and gets talked about. And I'm just thinking about a post I saw today about Josh Bone giving a BIM and VR talk or introduction to a group of Girl Scouts. And, you guys are all union contractors, right? And so that labor pool is dwindling and they're aging out. And they are not exactly tech savvy in some respects, although I would argue I've come across some really grisly superintendents that could work their way around some reality capture and some BIM in ways that I was blown away. So I would argue with it, but the future of all of your industries, whether you're a 15-person shop or whether you're, a 1,000-person shop, you're really leaning in and you're hiring union labor. And if they don't exist, I don't care which one you are, you won't get to hire them.
Right.
So are the organizations talking about how, obviously we're seeing Nika do it through Electri. Are you guys having those conversations? And if so, like, how are you approaching it or what's coming up? Because the future needs to know that construction is actually a technology profession in and of itself. It's a crafts world, but it's fueled now by technology. I think about the tradespeople we were sending out. You send them out on the job with a brand new phone, an iPad, or a laptop, or a Surface Pro, or a laser scanner, or 360 camera. Like, so are those conversations going on? And if so, how are you kind of incorporating that?
Jeff, I would say not really. Now Josh is smart and way ahead of the curve. In terms of talking about tech to young people, but college grads who are learning about tech and have all these skills, they want to go work for SAP. They don't want to go work for Gaston Electrical. And I think our trade associations and the unions are focusing more on labor shortage. Right. So they're trying to figure out, how do you convince a fourth grader that they'd like to be an electrician or a sheet metal worker, or a pipe fitter? Because most parents are saying, hey, you need to go to college, when maybe that's not the best value proposition. Right. So I think the labor shortage is really taking the lead on that. And it's not really a tech conversation, but I don't know. I think maybe we're all a little bit short-sighted on that part.
Let's see, and I'll have to argue with you there, Bill, because I think it's something that we're severely lacking in it if we're not embracing that. Because the reason they're picking to go to college versus go to the trades is the same reason that I picked to go to college. Is when I sat in my guidance counselor's office and I took a look, and on the board it was like there was a sign literally that had a construction worker on the left-hand side and a person in the suit on the right-hand side. And it said, go to college, be this guy, not this guy. And there's a lot of things wrong with that. We can all be honest with that. But yeah, but there's two things with that. One, we show them in their classic, hard hat and vest, right? And, bright colored vest. What we really should be doing is showing the Trimble XR10 on their head, a laptop in their hands, a laser scanner, a 360 camera, and, maybe splash up, hey, this guy has $30,000 a year in debt. This person made $100,000 a year and got an education. And we don't leverage that these jobs, a lot of the people that you guys are working with now that are in your executive committees came from the trade itself. This is a craft. The world around us doesn't get built. SAP doesn't have a damn building if y'all don't build it.
Yeah. So Jeff, we have a local, I guess it's better. It's a career center. So we're the high schoolers that are junior seniors can take half a day and go there. And so we had an open house. We had school buses bring I think it was 125 students to our building. And what we did is we started it later in the day, and we had their parents come as well. Because really, I disagree a little bit that you got to convince a fourth grader. You got to convince a fourth grader's parents.
Agreed.
So we had 125 students that were already in a construction-based trade type school in high school come to our facility, see lasers, see scanners, see the Revit, see all the stuff that we do. We ended up with 2 employees out of 125.
Yeah.
And
See,
I think that I do think that I've said it a lot that construction has a PR problem, the same way that the military had a PR problem in the 90s and they fixed it with a new marketing campaign. I think we need that. And I'm not trying to discount anything the UA does, like with Mike Z and Stefan Chanel, and we've had them on, but same to you, Joseph. Our locals do a good job, but it's also incumbent on the contractors. We do high school trade shows. We get out and talk to the kids. We have an internship program with the local high school, because I think it takes all of us obviously to get this problem solved, and we just have to keep attacking it at this level.
We
What
almost
about the
have to make-
devil's advocate? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
We almost have to make construction part of the STEM mindset. Like it is part of, I mean, I know I don't know how we rebrand ourselves, but instead of trades, it's got to be almost like we're part of the STEM industry.
So we have an intern this summer, and I actually have my operations technology guy actually has a similar background. Their background is agricultural systems technology, right? So there's actually a technology piece for ag. Why don't we have a construction technology offering, right? And that to me, I mean, like, and the universities have tons of kids in these programs. A lot of them come from family farm backgrounds, right? And I'm sitting there going, these are probably great for our audience, because how different is ag from construction? They can apply that same mindset and that same technology. So I know that's personally one where I'm going to be pursuing those kind of people for my industry, for our background. But I would love to see a university offer a construction technology degree.
I'm probably going to get in trouble for sharing this, but Purdue has a BIM program and a construction technology minor. I've been in conversations because of Hugh Seaton with UConn, so that they're starting to crop up. I know Danielle from Via Technic has done some stuff with Stanford, so they are starting. But and I think it's a great opportunity for contractors to really get involved in that.
I think process engineers are also a valuable kind of skill set in what we're doing too. So.
Can I ask you a question? I mean, I hear this from everybody all the time. They're always after high school and tech school. But when I went to Penn State's engineering department and told them how much people make just in construction as a pipe fitter, I mean, most of them with an engineering degree are not going to beat that. And a lot of them are not going to be the apprentice, and I honestly feel like construction should go straight at the grads and say, listen, there are a lot of cool jobs out there. You got your education, you got your liberal arts degree. Why don't you come into construction? Because those are people that are a little bit older. They do have that university sort of liberal arts education, which is helpful actually for what we're doing. I sometimes think we are like shooting too low. Like I get that we should be doing the tech part with universities because that's sexy. Computers and tech are sexy because I'm a nerd. But I feel like we could go the other way and just say, listen, you're coming out of school with a liberal arts degree. You don't know what you want to do. Join the electrical union, the plumbing union, the pipe fitters union, get paid to learn more.
So you're saying go after the French literature majors?
Yeah. What about the devil's advocate?
We're not getting anybody else.
We had Mike Z on a long time ago, right? And I guess he would speak to kind of the flip side of what we're talking about. Is we talk about a labor shortage, and what he said, like, that's bullshit, right? We are not training enough people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say we have a labor shortage when my local union here in town turns away thousands of applicants every year.
Yes.
And you say you have a labor shortage. I mean, I'm just saying.
But I think it's the skilled piece. It's the skilled word in front of it. That's why I said go after colleges. We have a skilled labor shortage because Mike will bring in those students and they'll wash out. He said it was like going to the base. It's like qualifying for pros. You're getting into the union. That just qualifies you to get to the plate. You still have to go through all the work. And I feel like, I hate to say it, I feel like universities have a lot of hoop jumpers that are getting good at jumping hoops, that have some skills. We could steal them. We have enough. We're spending enough money that I feel we could steal them. Yeah. But I'll get off my soapbox. When I talked to the engineering course, we got back at Spader and we weren't even hiring at least 4 applications from talking to one group of 20 people. And yes, I was using the sexy tech, the total stations and the scanners and all that, but still feel like there's a place there that we're like ignoring.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. Don't you feel like the specialty contractors like us are at a disadvantage? I mean, I feel like there's a lot of good construction programs, especially in and around Boston. There's some great tech schools. And I feel like most of the students that come out really want to go work for Turner Construction.
GC.
Big GC.
Yeah, they
CMs,
big city. They want to work on those huge jobs. And and you want to like just like kind of shake them, right, and just say, hey, this is an outrageously dynamic business that we have right here. It's way more interesting. You should come work for us.
Yeah.
And the message is just hard to convey because nobody's ever told them before that this exists. It's like they're programmed to think, oh, I want to go, I'm going to be a senior project manager.
I have a theory.
I go back to the PR problem. I would love to see, whatever trade associations go about it like the Army did in the 90s, get the Army of One, really promote it out there. I think that would make a big difference.
And I think we could convince the GCs to get in to be a part of that. I mean, some of them self-perform some work here and there, but
they're not getting it done without us, right?
That's what I said. Mostly they're reliant on the trades themselves.
Less and less of them self-perform. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing a swing back right now. But they're not going to swing all the way back. The pendulum's not going to swing the other way. It's going to be this balance. And without the trades, we can't get any of it built. So I also feel like there has been a little bit of self-serving. So from that, like when you talk to Mike Z or talk to Stefan, they're really focused on, their training facility to get that in. What the Army did and what the armed forces in general did was say, well, hell, we're going to have a huge marketing campaign and we're going to create a huge funnel. And we don't really care where you shake out. You end up as a pipe fitter, you end up as an electrician, you end up as a journeyman somewhere. We don't really care, but we just as an industry need to do this. And I feel like we're reaching across, and Trent, I'll go to learning from you. We're reaching across the aisle and things like IPD and new ways to deliver projects. We have to reach across that same aisle, and the GCs need to lean into the trades and say, listen, none of us is alone in this. We need it all. So let's bury the hatchet and let's freaking do this and let's do it better than we were before. Now, also, you all have like NECA, SMACNA, MCAA. You guys all have fantastic lobbying groups. So does the AGC and the ABC and others. We have to change I'm going to go to a Nathan Wood. I'm going to have to pay him.
Oh, damn it.
But tell me how I'm measured and I'll tell you how I perform. You do realize that guidance counselors are measured on the number of students that go to freaking college, and y'all aren't considered part of that. And that has to change.
Well, one of the things that we have missed out on is that first or second year, I hate to use the word dropout, but the person that's just not making it in college. And,
so most of the people here. Yeah.
Those people, so if that student were to transfer into a program that has an associate degree tied to it, they're not counted as a dropout or a non-graduate of that university. It's called a transfer. And so I think we're missing a little bit. You've got a student there that maybe has 1 strike, 2 strikes against them. They're maybe now a 20, 21-year-old student that has got a little more maturity, sowed some wild oats, if you will. And now they're a little more mature and they've gotten trained. They've gotten a little bit of schooling behind them, and they're wanting to prove themselves a little bit. So I think we're missing a little bit there. It could be somebody that also really would adapt to the tech side of things a little bit better than your high schooler right out of high school. We really have to start focusing in on that person.
Can I ask you, and this ties into what he said about sort of a bad PR in construction. We talk about having a labor shortage instead of having a boom in building. Because really what happened is we want to build so much stuff that we no longer have the people and availability to do that. So instead of saying there's this huge boom in construction, be a part of it, we're like, oh, there's a labor shortage.
Yeah,
and when you say there's a labor shortage, you're kind of saying no one wants to do that right now. Like it sounds negative. Like if I said there's a software, there's a software designer shortage, it's different than saying there's a boom in software design.
Great point.
It's just
the messaging is important, right?
Jonathan, one thing about yes, there's a boom in building, but the problem with building booms is they're pretty much centered around the large metropolitan areas in the country, right? So you can't build a building remote from Indiana. You know what I mean? If you're not close to the building in Boston that's being built. So, we see locals that are struggling throughout New England that have no work in their local and their membership is shrinking. Whereas in Boston, it's growing, right? They're taking in people like crazy.
We have people in our local that are traveling the East Coast. I get it.
Yeah.
So we need to open the borders to with the locals a little bit. I think. I mean,
And
that's the only
portability.
way. Yeah.
Portability.
Offsite manufacturing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's that too.
Build it in the country and ship it to the city.
Yeah.
But Bill, you're right. You know, the generation right now, they're saying that there's less and less of the generation wanting to be a homeowner. They're okay renting. They're okay being transient. So they probably are more portable than the generations ahead of them. So we might have a real good advantage here with this generation wanting to be, you know, they want to see the East Coast. They want to see the West Coast. They want to see what it's like in Texas. So we might be able to capture some of those people for a short period of time. It may not be that we're going to have those 30-year workers anymore. They might be in the construction industry for 5 to 7. They might be in California 1 year and Florida the next. It's going to be different. I think that's the other thing we do a big deal is we try to fit everybody into the last 30 years instead of looking ahead and saying, hey, this is going to be a different industry. We're building things quicker. Things are going to market quicker. The runway on the building site, that's the biggest thing I've seen in my career. We used to get school projects in Indiana that it would be 9-10 months before you would actually mobilize to the job site. You would have it on your backlog that long. We get jobs now that we have to be on the job the next week after we were apparent low bidder. And it is just, it's sped up. The front end, we've lost the front end, you know,
Right.
apparent low.
Apparently. I think I mean, but all that in the transient and the shorter lifespan, I think that touches on what Trent was saying in the chat. Like we maybe have a training problem, like being able to train these people up quickly, to realize that they're not going to last forever. And it's a hard, you know, Bill, I was going to touch on it a little bit too. Like you've got a finance background, like you're thinking about all the time and money that you're going to spend on these people to not keep them around. I mean, how does that change the calculus on that stuff?
Well, I mean, I don't think that turnover really helps any of us. I think that, you know, we want lifelong company employees that are loyal to us. I mean, that's a competitive advantage for us. So, I mean, you know, sometimes you need to add, you know, a number of workers for a single project that comes in, and you want to, you know, to have a reliable source that you can chase added work. It's a way to grow, you know, maybe a percentage of them stick around, you know, for a long period of time. But by and large, you want your core people to stay. You don't want them to bounce around every 5 years. That's really a challenge. You talk about training. It's not just trade training. Like we all do things a little bit differently, right? So we have a way, my competitors all have a way that are different. And it takes a little while to get somebody up to speed. And when, you know, you're turning people over, it's costly and time consuming, and, you know, it's effort to make sure they're doing things the way we want it done. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you, but I like people that want to stay right with us for their entire career.
Well, hopefully we get them addicted, I guess is the way to put it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
well, you know, I think a decade's probably pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I have a question because Stacy, you have a unique view on this, right? So you're an MEP, you've got it all. So do you see that being an advantage for you, or how do you? I mean, because you have more of a funnel, does that help you as a business? I mean, what's your take on it? You've been a little quiet on the recruiting, et cetera side. So what's your thoughts?
We're pretty fortunate here. I don't know. I've been with the company like 12 years now, and I'm low in the hierarchy of how many years. So we're very fortunate that we keep people a long time, but there's a ton of opportunity. And when we talk to people, that's really what the young people are looking for. They're looking for two things. So when we're recruiting people, we don't pay as well as what other people pay, like the Turners of the world and the J.E. Dunns and everybody, but we offer them the ability to stay where they're at. So unlike, I think Joseph mentioned, like people wanting to travel the world, most of our kids want to be close to home and want to stay local. So we offer them the ability to not have to travel the country, especially when they have families. And we also offer them lots of training. So we actually have one advantage of being bigger is we have an internal training group. We have 3 people dedicated to training project managers and project engineers above and beyond. So whether we get somebody from the trade or from the field, or we get somebody from college, they're all going through a training program to get to what we expect from a project manager. And then we offer them growth potential. But the thing is that we can't tell them when they come in what their growth potential is, because we don't know what the jobs of tomorrow are. Mm-hmm. My job didn't exist 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. You know, my BIM manager's job didn't exist 7 years ago. So, you know, we don't know what those next jobs are going to be. And so we tell them that, when we grow, we add opportunities for people, but we don't necessarily know what that opportunity looks like. But there is opportunity in multiple divisions, right? So we have people transfer from division to division. If people need to move because of family going to Omaha or something like that, we can offer people interoffice transfers and stuff. So that does help with recruiting. So there are some advantages to being a bigger organization when it comes to trying to get people into the industry. And you also just get that network, right? My intern I have this summer, his brother-in-law works for us. There's those kind of things that happen too.
I think it does come back to the PR that I mentioned too, because I think that I live in a very, very, very small town in the area. We always talk about the hollowing out of America, right? They take all these small town people and they have to go to the big cities to find jobs. And I do think that's the PR problem. I think that because they don't realize that there's opportunities here. We talk about some of the people we're missing. I think some of the people we're missing are those people that think they have to go to college, or they have to, after college, they have to stay in the big city or whatever. So I think there are opportunities, but there's also a lot of draw to the coast. So, we have to fix or talk about that a little bit. Jeff's asking in the chat, we're a quarter after the hour. We've talked a while. Let's bring it back to the associations a little bit. Let's bring it back to the MEP or the MCA Innovation Conference, or the MEP Innovation Conference. Talk a little bit from each of your perspectives about moving forward. This was the first year of the joint conference. I think all four of us are going to take part in a planning meeting in Tampa here later in the year. What do each of you think is that vision moving forward, and what are the benefits for that?
Well, I know I'll talk first, because I know that when I talked to Mark at SMACNA about the convention and should we collaborate together, I said, dude, I don't need another conference that I have to attend. I'm like, let's make one really great conference and make it really worthwhile for people to come to. And I said, let's also get us all on the same page, right? Because as a group, as an MEP industry together, we are way stronger when we're saying the same message and telling the same thing to all the general contractors of the world. So I'm super excited that as the three organizations are coming together and making that united front. And so I'm really hopeful. I'm so excited we're going to be in person next year, just because I thought they did a great job with the virtual format and engaging people, but I don't think anything replaces the time around the bar and just like getting to know people. And that to me is usually where the value comes at the conferences. So I'm super excited.
That's why we have a podcast.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is exactly why we started this.
So I'm super excited for the convention.
Will you still wear your duck pajamas? I mean, can you bring those to the in-person?
I think I have to, don't I?
I think you have to at this
point.
point. Yeah,
I came really close to wearing them for this, but I didn't.
Yeah, I agree with Stacy. I mean, we live in the same space. The three MEP groups. We not only live in the same space in the tech world, but we do above ceiling, right? So we're living in we have the same problems. We want to always state how differently we are, how different an electrical is from a mechanical, from sheet metal, whatever. But we really have the same problems. So one thing I'd like to get out of our joint meeting coming up is just really trying to bring it back to the ground level, bring it back to that small contractor. I think so many times we're a little bit in the clouds with things. And if we can get some concrete things that we can bring back to your everyday contractor that's not leveraging tech, then these kind of meetings are very worthwhile.
Bill, anything final on that one?
Yeah, I agree with both Stacy and Joseph. I mean, I think long term, I hope that the three associations working together can really come up with some kind of a standard on how we should be collaborating. Right now, locally, I see a lot of the multi-trade work, the modular work being outsourced by general contractors, and they're not leaning on local labor to do that work, and that's becoming problematic. Not to mention the quality that we see coming from out of country or from 10 states away is really low. And I think that we all have the ability to do what it is that our customers are looking for. We just need to figure out collectively what the best way to do it is. And I mean, that's going to take some time, but I love the fact that the three associations are working together. We all have common interests. We all stand to gain from working together. And I think the more that we talk and get together and share our expertise in construction in general and in our specific trades, that we can come up with a better way to build the mousetrap. And I think if we do that, we're all better off.
Man,
I
before
think
we go,
Sure.
I got to touch on what Bill just so yeah, I mean, to quote Nathan Wood again, we talk about the common data exchange, and we talk about how the GCs and the CMs a lot of times kind of force the sub trades into certain platforms that we have to work within, and there's that communication issue. But what better way to try and drive that industry than let's build our numbers, let's all come together. If we can get the MEPs to come together and kind of build that conglomerate, like what we're going to use to do what we do, then I think we could even drive the rest of the project teams to maybe use what we're using. Because you know how it is, guys. I mean, we're kind of beholden to what's brought to the project a lot of times.
For sure.
But that's because we're the small guy. So what if we aren't the small guy?
Well, that's a heck of a way to put it. And at the end, Trent, you're going to have to pay Nathan for your shared pains and your
I owe
and
him
your-
so much.
and your common data exchange. We'll
Yeah.
dip into the kitty for that one, Nathan.
Right.
Thank you as always.
Bring it out of the show funds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll bring it out of the show funds. But
Zero.
we're gonna have to wrap it up here. But I'm really grateful to Joseph, Stacy, and Bill for joining us today. It's been a fantastic episode. In closing, I wanna reach out to everybody listening that if you're not involved with your local NECA, SMACNA, and it's NECA, NECA.org, it's SMACNA, SMACNA.org, and MCAA.org. So it's super easy to get there. Get involved, because the only person who's being left behind if you don't is you. So get involved with them, get involved with the tech organizations. If you're thinking you might want to, then the answer is yes, you want to. We need people of all sizes, all shapes, all everything to get involved, because it's not going to happen unless we do it together. And we appreciate all of you for coming together, bringing your opinions and bringing these ideas to us and spreading the word. I know the dorks are looking forward to Stacy being in person next year and trying to get to be a part of it. So right here, right now, you heard it here first. We're here for you. We love to do these things. And I think we're fairly good at doing this conversation. So
Sure.
From that perspective, we want to thank everybody who joined in, everybody who's listening. Go out, do great things, as one of my good friends says, and we appreciate all of you. Thank you for joining us. This has been episode 28, a serious power triangle. We were definitely not the smartest in the room, and we're very appreciative to have all of you with us.
Never end.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's been one of those days, Stacy.
Oh, holy
like-
shit.
Yeah.
Rod,
It was
like,
good to have a reason. Yeah.
Well,
Rod comes around and he sees me detailing like a grease interceptor on this job we're doing, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm out of people."
he's met Nick before, and Nick loses his mind when you mention TikTok. All you have to do is go up to Nick Espinoza and say TikTok and just watch him. He'll just go off
Yeah.
It's
for an hour
Meltdown.
on how China's invading us through our phones.
And Dropbox.
I have to say I love repeating that stuff to my daughter because it just infuriates her. And it's lovely to watch like a 16-year-old girl get infuriated about her phone. It's
I don't let
enjoyable.
my kids have TikTok or Snapchat.
Mm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I will
so,
soon lose that power because they're old enough that I'm not going to be able to control it much longer. But
So yeah, Stacy, I'm the weird one. I have no Facebook, no Instagram, no Snapchat, I don't have any of it
so why
You
are
have
you
it-
on this podcast?
because this is all I have. Somebody kept using the word, they're using the word decimate now to like the population was decimated. And I was like, that means 10% eliminated, right? Like not everyone. So I'm just going, it's like, I don't think
Details.
it's like, I don't think they're using
You're
that correctly.
overthinking this.
I don't think that word
You're-
means what you think it means.
Yeah. that does not
She'll keep
make sense.
using that word. She'll keep using that word. I don't think that word means what you think it means.
Hmm.
So say what you want. We are labeled as explicit. So if you drop an F-bomb here or there, it's going to go out. We're not going to edit it because that's just too much fucking time.